What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and this is my hands-on comparison of the Google Nexus 5 to the Samsung Galaxy S4. Now the S4 has been the most popular Android smartphone of 2013 so far. Can the Google Nexus 5 change that? Well, do hit that thumbs up button and let's find out. So we'll start off with the size, both very similar, just minor differences between the two. The Nexus 5 is 0.6mm smaller in terms of width, but the S4 is 1.3mm smaller in height and also 0.7mm thinner compared to the Google Nexus 5. But in terms of the physical size, you really won't notice much of a difference. Screen size is also very similar. The S4 has a full 5-inch screen, whereas the Nexus 5 has a 4.95-inch screen. Once again, a very minor difference and nothing you'll be likely to notice. We also have the same resolution, full 1080p HD, so 1920 by 1080 pixels. A very minor difference in PPI, 441 on the S4 versus 445 on the Nexus 5. And with the high pixel densities, both are very sharp displays. The difference is in the type of screens. The Nexus 5 has an IPS Plus display, whereas the S4 has a Super AMOLED display. So the whites do look better and brighter on the Nexus 5. But I did find that the S4 had much deeper blacks, giving you better contrast, and the Nexus 5 did seem a little washed out in comparison. Moving on to the build, the S4 has that polycarbonate plastic build with a hyperglaze finish. Now this hasn't been very popular, and although it's not a problem for some, lots of people do find that it looks and feels cheap compared to many other competitive devices out there. The Nexus 5 also has a plastic build, but it's a completely different type of plastic. We've got a soft touch plastic, very similar to the 2013 edition of the Google Nexus 7, and in my opinion it feels nice in the hand. It's definitely more grippy than the S4, which sometimes feels like it's going to slip out of your hand, and it also looks and feels more premium. In terms of the different versions available, the S4 comes in the Black Mist or the White Frost versions. There's also some other limited versions available. The Nexus 5 comes in the Black or the Black and White. Performance wise, the S4, you've got a quad-core 1.9GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon 600 processor with the Adreno 320 GPU and 2GB of RAM. There's also an Exynos Octa version as well. I've got the quad-core 1.9GHz version here. The Nexus 5 comes with a quad-core 2.3GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor with the Adreno 330 GPU and also 2GB of RAM. So as the Nexus 5 is almost 6 months newer compared to the Samsung Galaxy S4, it does have the latest internals, and in terms of benchmarks and performance, it is definitely faster overall. I've done a benchmark and speed comparison between the Nexus 5 and the Samsung Galaxy S4 in a separate video, so do go ahead and check that out. A link will be in the description below. Now, although the Nexus 5 is faster and gets the edge in terms of performance, in general usage I really don't think it's going to be much of an issue for most people out there. The S4 is still very fast and performs really well. Now in terms of the storage, the S4 comes in either the 16, 32 or 64GB versions. The Nexus 5 comes in either the 16 or 32GB versions. I've got both the 16GB versions here, and out of the total available storage, the Nexus 5 has roughly about 12.5GB, whereas the S4 comes in much lower at just over 9GB, and that's because of the TouchWiz software, which does take up a lot of space. The S4 however does come with expandable storage. You've got a micro SD card slot which lets you expand your storage by up to 64GB, giving you a big advantage over the Nexus 5, which does not have expandable storage. Now the cameras, the S4 has a 13MP rear-facing camera, the Nexus 5 has an 8MP rear-facing camera that does come with Optical Image Stabilisation. Both of these can film 1080p HD video. Front-facing cameras, the S4 has a 2MP front-facing camera capable of filming 1080p HD. The Nexus 5 has a 1.3MP front-facing camera capable of filming 720p HD. Now I have done an in-depth camera comparison between the two, so do go ahead and check that out. A link will be in the description below. Overall, I think the S4 wins for the front-facing camera with the high resolution and more detail. Rear-facing cameras, I had mixed results, and I think it will come down to personal preference, both producing slightly different results in slightly different scenarios. And I will leave it to you to see my in-depth comparison and make your own decision. In terms of the camera interfaces, I did prefer the S4. You've got lots more options and modes, including a dual camera mode which lets you use both the front and rear facing cameras at the same time, and you can also touch to focus in video, something that you can't do in the Nexus 5. Touching while in video mode on the Nexus 5 simply takes a picture. Now operating systems, this is interesting. Although both of these run Android, the general S4 version has Samsung's TouchWiz UI skin on top, whereas the Nexus 5 has that stock Android vanilla experience. So at this point in time, the Nexus 5 comes with the latest version of Android, which is 4.4 KitKat, and the S4 has Android Jelly Bean 4.3. Now the big advantage here for the Nexus 5 is that you'll be getting the latest updates directly from Google, and you won't have to wait around for LG or anyone else to bring them to you. To put this into context, Android Jelly Bean 4.3 came out at the end of July this year, and I only just got the 4.3 update on my S4 this week, so November, which is over 3 months late, and that's also after the release of KitKat 4.4, so it's already a version behind. Now TouchWiz is not all that bad. You do get some additional features with TouchWiz on the S4. To mention a few, you've got Smart Scroll and Smart Pause. Now these track your eyes and head to either scroll up and down a page or pause a video when you look away. Maybe considered gimmicky to some. Air View and Air Gesture are quite useful. Give you a preview when you hover your finger over certain areas, and you can also answer your phone by simply waving your hand across the device. Multi-window allows you to have 2 apps open at the same time. Great for watching video while you're tweeting, for instance. And because of the super sensitive screen on the S4, you can also use it with gloves. Very useful if, like me, you live in a cold country. And you also have an IR blaster on the S4, which lets you control other infrared devices such as your TV right from your smartphone. Touching on some of the new features that come with KitKat on the Nexus 5, SMS has now been combined into Hangouts. This did take a little bit of time to get used to, but was easy enough after a bit. Google Now can be accessed by a swipe up from the home button or with a swipe left from the home screen. You can also access Google Now by simply saying OK Google from the home screens. The phone app has also been improved massively with predictive dialing, automatic prioritization of your contacts based on the people you talk to most. And now, as well as your contacts, you can also search nearby places right from within the dialer. Before this update, I would have preferred the TouchWiz dialer, but these new updates definitely add a lot more functionality to the Nexus 5. Other features include improved NFC payments, improved printing, newly designed Quick Office and others. Now we are likely to see a lot of these in the future on the S4. When? Well, I'm not too sure. The S4 does have a Google Play edition as well, which will give you the vanilla Android experience, but you still won't get the updates as quickly as the Nexus 5. So I think this does come down to personal preference. Do you want the updates and the latest features of Android directly from Google and you don't want to wait around for them? Or do you like some of those additional features that the S4 offers with TouchWiz? Now both of these do have an LED indicator, which I think is very useful. The S4 has one on the top left and the Nexus 5 has one on the bottom center. The S4 has a physical home button along with 2 capacitive buttons off screen. The Nexus 5 however has the buttons on screen. Now although the on-screen menu buttons on the Nexus 5 are now on a transparent background and not as intrusive as they used to be, and there's also an immersive mode for books and games which hides them, I still prefer the off-screen buttons on the S4, especially in areas such as gallery where I like having a full screen experience. Now neither of these have a great speaker, but I was expecting the Nexus 5 to be better because of the placement. The speaker is on the bottom compared to the back of the S4, but I did find that the S4 was louder and produced more rich sound compared to the Nexus 5. Now neither of these are great as mentioned, but between the two, if I had to choose, I would say that the S4 has a better speaker. Now moving on to the batteries, this is important for a lot of people and understandably so. The S4 comes with a 2600 mAh battery which is removable. The Nexus 5 comes with a 2300 mAh battery which is not removable. However, the Nexus 5 does offer wireless charging out of the box, something that the S4 doesn't offer. Not out of the box anyway. In terms of usage, I did find that the S4 gave me a little bit more usage throughout the day, but generally speaking, if you're a light to medium user, you should get through the day on a single charge on both of these. However, if you are a heavy user, then I do think you'll need a top up. The advantage of the S4 is that you can carry around a spare or replace the battery altogether, and because of that, I would give the edge to the S4. Now finally, looking at the price, comparing the like-for-like versions, so the off-contract 16GB versions on both sides, the S4 you can pick it up for roughly about £400 here in the UK or $600 in the US. Now the Nexus 5 comes in at an absolutely insane price of £299 here in the UK or $349 in the US. Now we are looking at the off-contract prices to weigh up the value between these two, and the Nexus 5 comes in considerably cheaper compared to the Samsung Galaxy S4. So there we have it, the Google Nexus 5 and the Samsung Galaxy S4. Now the S4 is a few months old now, but Samsung have packed so many different features into this thing that although you might not like all of them, there's at least a few that you will like. And with that removable battery as well as the expandable storage, you do have some more flexibility here, which still make the S4 a great option. The Google Nexus 5 on the other hand is a bit faster compared to the S4 overall and offers that stock vanilla Android experience, the true Google Android experience, and comes in at an insanely low price. And in terms of price alone and value for money, the Nexus 5 is definitely the best option out there at the moment. What do you think? Which one do you like better? Do drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, as always, please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to the channel? I've got plenty more content coming up in here. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV, and I'll see you next time. If you want to see more regular videos like this one, then be sure to hit the subscribe button, which will be below. If you're on a mobile device, it may be somewhere else. If you want to see my previous related video, then hit the link right here. If you want to stay in touch over Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, then all of the addresses will be there somewhere, as well as direct links in the description below. Okay, if you're still watching, then that means you've not done one of those things, so, you know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna go downstairs. See. Okay. There isn't really a downstairs. Anyway, so yeah.